Good morning, Year 4. How are you? And welcome to today's science lesson. Today, you're going to learn about the functions of the basic parts of the digestive system, something that we briefly touched on last lesson, but we're going to look at in a bit more detail today. And by the end of this lesson, to be successful, you will be able to do three things. You will be able to identify where the different parts of the digestive system are in our bodies. You will be able to match the parts of the digestive system with their functions, and you will be able to explain some of the functions of the basic part of the digestive system. Your retrieval today is to try and label as many parts of the digestive system as you can. Now, this outline of the human body with the different organs is in your resource pack, and I've given you some examples of some of the labels that you might be able to include. And remember, you need to draw a line from the label to the correct organ, to the part of the digestive system. Now, this is in your resource pack, so I would like you to spend around 5 to 6 minutes trying to label as much as you can remember. Make sure you're not cheating and using the rest of your resource pack to help you. You should only use your first sheet, and I will know if you've been cheating, okay? We want to know what you know, okay? So that's really important. We're not going to go through the answers. We're going to just have a go, and then I'm going to mark it when you send your work in this week, okay? So pause the video now and spend 5 to 6 minutes working on that retrieval, please. Off you go. Okay, how did you get on? Did you manage to label lots of the different parts of the digestive system? You're fantastic, well done. Did you cheat? No, of course you didn't. Year 4 would never do that, would you? Fantastic, well done, guys. Okay, now we're going to explore in a bit more detail the journey our food takes through our bodies. Now, to start with, I want you to just think, how long do you think it takes for food to pass through your digestive system, through all of those organs that we learned about last week? How long do you think that process takes? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, well, it actually takes between 24 and 36 hours for food to pass through our digestive system. And we're going to look at the different stages of this today in a bit more detail. So we know that the first part of the digestion process starts without you even eating. And this is what happens with the salivary glands. So we have some glands in our throat called the salivary glands. And when we smell food that smells really nice and really yummy, our salivary glands produce something called saliva. So that's like the spit in our mouths. And you might have heard the phrase of someone saying, "Oh, that food is making my mouth water." And actually, that's where your salivary gland produces this saliva. This is the reason why your mouth waters, because your salivary gland produces that saliva. And the amount of saliva increases as you taste the food. So the more food that goes in your mouth, the more saliva that your salivary glands produce. And that's because the saliva is mostly made from water. It helps you to chew, to taste, and to swallow food. And also, our saliva contains something called enzymes. Have you heard of that word before? Fantastic. Don't worry about it too much, but enzymes are little things that start to break down the food that we eat. So when our food first enters our mouth, our salivary gland mixes all the food together with the water, because the saliva is made from that. And the enzymes which are in the salivary gland starts to break down the food. And when our food is in our mouth, this is where it mixes with the saliva and also the top part of your mouth. So can you feel with your tongue your top part of your mouth like this? That is called your soft palate. And this helps move the food along to the esophagus, which starts around here and goes down, okay? So the food enters your mouth, it mixes with the saliva, and then the top part of your mouth moves it down to the esophagus. But before it does that, our teeth play an important part in the food too, because we know the different types of teeth work together to tear, to cut, and to grind food into smaller pieces to make sure that it's ready to be swallowed and to move down the esophagus. And also, our tongue helps mix the food and saliva together too. So that's all that works in our mouth area with our salivary glands, our mouth, our tongue, and our teeth. And then, after you've swallowed your food, it travels down your esophagus. Can you remember what two organs connect the esophagus together? That's right, it connects from the mouth to the stomach. So the esophagus is that muscular tube which forms the path between the mouth and the stomach. Now, food doesn't just roll down the esophagus, it doesn't just do roly-polies and just go whoop, and it's down there. It actually has muscles in your esophagus which contract and relax to move the food down really, really gently and really, not slowly because it's quite a fast process, but it does it in a really controlled way. So if you think when you're breathing, you breathe in and you breathe out. You breathe in and you breathe out. That's what happens down with the muscles in the esophagus. They contract and they relax, and as they do this, your food slowly moves down this pipe here. But did you know, if you swallowed upside down, the food would still get to your stomach, but the muscles would just push it upwards instead of downwards? How funny is that? Okay, so then when it's travelled down to the esophagus, where does it get to? That's right, I can hear lots of you saying the stomach. Absolutely. It takes around 7 seconds for the food to travel down the esophagus to the stomach. I want you to count now for 7 seconds. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And by that time, your food will have travelled down the esophagus to the stomach. But how does it get there again? Ah, yes, the muscles contract and relax to push it down. When your food is in your stomach area, the stomach has lots and lots of acids and muscles to break down the food. So it helps to really break down the food further. And did you know, adult stomachs can hold around 1.5 litres of food. That is a lot of food that our stomachs can hold. When your food is in your stomach, it stays in your stomach for 4 hours. And by that time, it's mostly liquid. And then what happens is the small intestine absorbs all of the nutrients from your food, so all of the good things that we need to have energy and help our body. It passes all of these nutrients into our blood. So the small intestine makes sure it picks out all the good bits and passes them back into our blood to help us get the energy. But what happens to the leftover food that we don't need? The leftover food passes to the large intestine. And this whole process is helped by 3 other organs: the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. Can you remember what any of these organs do from last lesson? Don't worry if you don't, we're going to have a look in a bit more detail today. But did you know small intestines are really, really long? The average size of an adult small intestine is around 7 metres long. So if you think of my metre stick at school, 7 of those is as long as an adult small intestine. My goodness, that is very long indeed. So it goes through the small intestine and any leftover food takes to the large intestine. But before we do that, we need to learn about the 3 other organs involved in this process: the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas. And let's have a look what they do. So, the gallbladder is this organ here. And the gallbladder stores this digestive liquid called bile from the liver. And this helps to digest our fat. So any fat from the foods that we eat, it helps to digest it. And that's what the gallbladder does. So if you think gallbladder, digests fat. And then it releases this bile into the duodenum, this organ that releases everything else. That part of the small intestine, it releases everything else when it's needed. So it releases the bile into the duodenum when it's needed. So the gallbladder digests fat. Then we have the pancreas. The pancreas digests the proteins, the carbohydrates, and the fats. And it produces those things. Do you remember when we were talking about enzymes? It produces those enzymes to help to digest those foods, those parts of the foods. And then again, it then releases them when they are digested into the duodenum. And the duodenum, remember, is the first part of the small intestine. And then we've got our 3rd organ, the liver. The liver, we can see here, it's a huge organ. It's the largest organ in your body and it has lots of functions. It has 500 functions. The liver produces bile too, which helps to absorb and break down fats exactly like it is in the gallbladder. And the liver then sends this bile to the gallbladder because then we know that the gallbladder uses the bile to break down fats. Well done. And then that bile is sent to the duodenum. Really important to remember that the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder do not pass through, no food passes through these organs, okay? So no food passes through them like they do with the small intestine and the esophagus and the large intestine. But they do help to get the nutrients from the food out of the small intestine and into our bloodstream, because we know that not all of our food is digested, because the good stuff is sent back to our blood and the bad stuff is digested, and that all goes through our large intestine. The liver also does a really clever thing because it filters all of the blood. Have you ever filtered water before? Because when we filter water, we get all of the bad stuff out of it. And that's what liver does with the blood. They filter the blood so that any harmful things, any things that are going to cause harm to the body, can't pass through. So it keeps us nice and safe. Isn't that so clever how it does that? And then we know that the duodenum is the first part of the small intestine. And all of this food that is broken down by the bile from the gallbladder and enzymes from the pancreas are stored in the duodenum. Because then this food goes to the large intestine. And in the large intestine, this is where most of the water from the food is removed. So it turns the food back into a solid. Because we have lots and lots of water in this process that is in the food that we eat, okay? And the large intestine's job is to turn it back to a solid so it can form stool, okay? So that thing that we release, the stool that we release from our bodies when we go to the toilet. And any food that hasn't been digested by the small intestine and the 3 organs is absorbed here. And it connects the small intestine to the rectum. So the final bit of the digestive system is where all the leftovers go through the large intestine. All the bits that our body doesn't need to stay healthy are in here, okay? Now, here's the last bit. In the large intestine, the leftover food is here. It makes stool, and then the rectum keeps this stool that the large intestine has passed to the rectum, and then the rectum tells the brain, you need the toilet now, and then the anus releases the stool by going to the toilet. So then when we go to the toilet, we get rid of all the parts that our body doesn't need, and the rest gets absorbed into our bloodstream so that we can take the bits from our body that needs it. And then that is the end of the digestive process. So hopefully today you've learnt a lot about the digestive system and their functions. So your task now is to cut out the digestive function flaps here and stick them onto the correct body parts, okay? So if you are not able to print this worksheet out, that's absolutely fine. But what you can do is you can just write mouth, and then you can write a little colon and then state what that function is. All of these have functions for each of them. Have a think, what have we learnt today? What functions are for what part of the digestive system? An optional task for you here is to create your own homemade digestive system. It states all the things you need and it states the method. And this is just a really practical way for you to actually see how the digestive system works using lots of different foods. You don't have to do this, it's just an optional task if you want to really understand it a bit better. But if you do it, please send me videos of you doing it because I'd really love to see them, okay? Your final task for today, we have come to the end of our science topic on eating and digestion. Have you enjoyed it? Fantastic. You have got your end of unit assessment here. It's really important that you complete it to the best of your ability and that you don't receive any help from your grown-ups at home. You complete it on your own and then I can really see what you've learnt this topic, okay? So thank you for listening and have a fantastic rest of your day, Year 4, and I will see you in our next lesson. Goodbye.